So we've got a reimagining of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Tell us more.
So it's a very unique film. It's a one-man film based on a one-man play by James Swanton, and it's James uncut for 90 minutes. We use kind of dissolves and visual tricks to keep it interesting, but this is very much one take for 90 minutes. So it's basically the creature story from his perspective. Yeah.
So you're very much looking into the psychology and the point of view of Frankenstein, of the monster, really.
Very much so, yeah. It's his kind of fractured psyche as he kind of retells his own life story. And yeah, no, it's very unique. It's very unusual, but hopefully people will have a memorable experience watching it.
And would I be right in saying it feels very much like a tragedy?
It's very much a tragedy, yeah. For me, some of my favourite monsters do have tragedy at their heart. So, I mean, he's still a horrific, horrible monster that does terrible, terrible things. But you still have an empathy for Frankenstein especially, I think. And so, yeah, we really wanted to get that across as well.
And working with the actor, were you able then to just do this chronologically where you may not normally do?
Yeah, so I worked closely with James. We had a week of rehearsal leading up to the shoot, but then it is one 90-minute take. Yeah. There's no tricks. We use, dissolves to keep things visually interesting, kind of to represent his sort of mental state. But it's James for 90 minutes with no tricks, and he is, more human than human. He's amazing.
Was it easy then for you, because of that, to have a more intimate crew and create this safe environment for James?
Absolutely, yeah, it was exactly that. Yeah, it was a very tiny crew, and yeah, the safe environment was sort of, because it's quite a task. It's a big ask of someone, but I'm so proud of what we achieved together.
And you're screening at Frightfest. That must be really exciting.
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah, I mean, I first came here in 2002. I was here when Chris Nolan was here. I suspect he didn't do as much drinking at the Imperial as I've done, hence the sunglasses and the sheen of sweat. But yeah, no, to sort of be at a festival with my first film, having the world premiere where some of the all-time greats have shown their movies is just such an honour, yeah.
This is a reenactment of Mary, or a retracing of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. You've written this as well, and I just wondered how all this began for you. Did you sit there with a blank piece of paper and say, okay, I want to see this from Frankenstein's point of view?
Yeah, well, the genesis of the entire project really was me sat on my own at the age of about 10 or 11 reading Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, and of course the great dark heart of that book is the point at which Mary Shelley allows the creature to speak in his own voice and tell his own story from his point of view. Usually the creature's eloquence is the very first thing to go in adaptations of the Frankenstein story. And I just remember being so deeply moved by that. So it's sort of remained with me in the back of my head ever since. And one day it occurred to me how wonderful to do this in the one-person form, because you'd be able to communicate dramatically precisely what Mary Shelley wants her readers to feel. She wants you to feel, she wants you to feel as deep a sympathy as you can with a character who is, in many ways, unspeakable. He's reprehensible. He's a serial killer. I mean, that would be bad enough, but he's a narcissistic serial killer, and he's a psychopath. And in any other situation, it would be impossible to feel sympathy for this creature. But when you are unable to get away from his persuasive words and eloquent explanations of why he's committed these atrocities, you're forced into a kind of understanding with him. So that's been quite an interesting journey, all in all.
I can imagine, because then did you go on your own journey of exploring psychopaths, serial killers, and trying to kind of get your own understanding of how and why people do what they do and what drives them? I'm thinking for you as the motivation of your character as well.
I mean, a lot of that came after the writing process in figuring out how best to perform the character. Because for the actual writing, everything is there in Mary Shelley's novel. And it was very important to me, even though I don't use any of Mary Shelley's words, to remain as true to the spirit and the events of her novel as possible. With regards to the creature as psychopath and narcissist, this does manifest in the performance. It took a very long time, for example, to find a voice of a creature. I certainly don't speak in the way I'm speaking to you now, because it would not be appropriate.
That's acting.
That is indeed acting, but we hit upon the idea of the creature, given he has such a fractured personality, he wouldn't have one voice. He'd have multiple voices, and he'd have moments where he's sort of speaking in a combination of two of them, or all three of them. So, yes, in attempting to manipulate with his cunning monologue, he changes his personality.
And that's the emotional journey that you're taking us through as well, to keep the audience invested on the thing too.
I hope so. I hope so.
Having to hit certain beats.
Yeah.
And with regards to kind of preparing the monologue, it's all filmed in one take. That's some undertaking.
Yes, although there was a caveat to that. I do have to say I've performed it in the theatre a few years ago now, and of course in the theatre you only ever have one take. That was helpful. That just gave me a bit of a sense I could do it. Of course, in the theatre you never have a camera pointed at you and a man behind the camera, cruel and sadistic, saying, I'm going to record this and it will be here forever. That is rather frightening. So it was high stakes, and even more so when we got to the space. We filmed in a sort of ruined, deconsecrated chapel in January. And it was very, very cold indeed. I thought within about 5 minutes of the makeup being applied that I was going to die. And I'm barefoot throughout, and I'm not overly clad in layers of clothing. I'm not a method actor by nature. I'm not entirely sure what being a method actor means anymore. It's a term that's been so much abused. But I felt rather method doing that. I could sympathise with being a a pitiful, misused creature abandoned in the Arctic.
Again, that's acting.
Well, it wasn't acting. Well, it was, but it's. I don't know who I am anymore. It's very confusing.
Well, you are the star of your film at Frightfest. A lot to celebrate today. You're excited?
I'm nervous. Excited. Nervous mainly, because normally when I do care, selfishly, because normally when I give a performance, I have some control over it, and all of my adrenaline goes into just getting the performance out. Today I'm going to sit in a cinema seat surrounded by other people watching it for the first time, and I'm not going to be able to do anything about it. It's terrifying.
You're just going to have to go with it.
That's the fright in my Frightfest.